Alright, 6th graders, we're back again. Today we're going to be looking at solving equations that are containing decimals.
What,
By
Mom?
the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to solve one-step equations that have decimals in them. Alright, so the nice thing is when we're looking at solving equations, the process really isn't any different than when we were solving equations earlier this year. So it's all about working backwards and using inverse operations. So just to review, if you see an addition problem, its inverse would be to subtract. If you see a multiplication problem, the inverse would be to divide, and vice versa. So you go ahead and pause the video at this point and try these problems out on your own and see how you do. Our first problem I'm going to look at is x minus 3 and 84/100 equals 7 and 2/10. Since I'm subtracting, I'm going to do the inverse of that. Remember, we got to keep it balanced. I'm going to add 3 and 84/100 to both sides. Now the biggest thing to remember though too is that we need to make sure we line up our decimal points when we add. Those cancel out, and on the left side I'm left with just x.
Okay.
Yep. On the right side then, I'm going to actually add 7 and 2/10 and 3 and 84/100. I'm going to put in a 0 placeholder. So we have 4, 8 plus 2 is 10. I'm going to bring down my decimal point so it's lined up. 7 plus 3 is 10 plus 1 is 11. So our final answer is 11 and 4/100. My next problem, I have 26 equals y minus 20 and 51/100. Since it's an addition problem, I'm going to do the inverse, so I'm going to subtract. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Now, for sake of room, I'm actually going to write this off to the side so I have more space, so I can line up my decimal points. So 26 is really, I'm going to put 2 decimal points behind it. So I have my decimal points in there. Go ahead and borrow. This becomes a 10, which then becomes a 9. And then this is going to become a 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. 9 minus 5 is 4. I'm going to bring down my decimal point so it's in the same spot. 5 minus 0 is 5. 2 minus 2 is 0. So in the end, when I subtract my 20 and 51/100, we get a final answer of 5 and 49/100 is equal to y. Okay. Remember now that this fraction bar actually means division. So if I have w divided by 3 and 9/10.
It was 10 minutes.
So like I was saying, since we're dividing, we're going to go ahead and multiply both sides
for that one.
by 3 and 9/10. So I'm going to multiply by 3 and 9/10 on both sides. Those will cancel out and we're left with just w. Now I'm going to do 1 and 2/10 times 3 and 9/10. Order doesn't matter. 2 times 9 is 18. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. I'm going to put in my 0. 1 times 9, 1 times 3. Go ahead and add 8, 16, okay. 468, but we need to account for our decimals, so if I estimate with my whole numbers, 3 times 1 would be 3, so my decimal point is going to go in between my 4 and my 6. So it would be 4 and 68/100. On the last problem, remember that when you see a number written right next to a variable, it means they're being multiplied. So to undo this, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 1 and 6/10, and I'm going to go ahead and write that as a fraction, just as practice. These are going to cancel out, and you're left with just c. So now I'm going to take 4 and divide it by 1 and 6/10. I have to move my decimal point over one spot, which means I have to move it over one spot here. This becomes a 40. 16 goes into 40 2 times, which would be 32. I'm going to subtract that and get 8. Add in another 0 placeholder. 16 goes into 80. Five times 6 is 30. 5 plus 3 is 80. 0 left over, so our final answer is 2 and 5/10. So go ahead and circle all those so you have them. So let's look at a couple of real world examples. Yancy wants to buy a new snowboard that costs $396. If she earns $8.25 per hour, how many hours must she work to buy this snowboard? So here we know that she works $8.25 per hour and she wants to earn $396. So since these are being multiplied in my equation, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by $8.25. So going ahead and doing that off to the side, I have my 396 divided by my 825. Oops. To move my decimal point over 2 spots, which means I'm going to add 2 zeros here at the end. 825, if you want to put in your zeros, does not go into 0, 39, or 396. The 8 goes into 39. We'll say 4 times. 4 times 5 would be 20. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. 4 times 8 is 32, plus 1 is 33. Let's go ahead and subtract. Okay, and I'm going to bring down my other 0. 825 would go into 6,600, so 8 would go into 66. I'll say 8 times. 8 times 5 would be 40. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 4 would be 20. 8 times 8 is 64, plus 2 would be 66. Final answer is 0. So here we have a 0 afterwards, so she would have to work 48 hours in order to earn enough for the snowboard. So now after doing that one, why don't you go ahead and pause the video and try the next one on your own. So if a game box is 2.5 inches tall, the toy store has shelving space measuring 15 inches vertically in which to store boxes. How many boxes can be stacked in this space? So when I look at this problem, it's 2.5 inches per box, and we have 15 inches. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and divide. Okay. So 15 divided by 2.5, move the decimal point over 1 spot. So this becomes 150. Okay, 25 can go into 150 6 times. So if you think this would be 0, so they could fit 6 boxes. So the last thing we're going to take a look at today are solving two-step equations. While this is not actually part of the lesson, it's good extension. Remember, once again, it's all about working backwards. So if you think about using the order of operation or PEMDAS, we're actually going to be working the opposite way that we were before. So in this first problem, I have x divided by 1 and 5/10, and then I'm subtracting 8 equals 10. Well, order of operations, I would do the division first and then the subtraction. So if I'm working backwards, I have to get rid of the addition or the subtraction first. In order to do that, I'm going to do the inverse operation. So I'm going to take both sides and add on 8. These will cancel out, and that leaves us with x divided by 1 and 5/10 equals 18. Now it becomes a one-step equation. Since x is divided by 1 and 5/10, I'm going to multiply both sides. Those cancel each other off, and x is equal to 18 times 1 and 5/10, so 5 times 8, 45 plus 9.
Mama, I can't do it.
8 and 1.
Mama, I can't do it.
We add all these up.
Mommy.
We get 270. 18 times 1, if we use the estimation, would be 18, so our decimal point's going to go after the 27, so our answer would actually be just x equals 27. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video and try the next one on your own. Alright, on this problem, once again we're working backwards. Since it's a plus 2, I'm going to subtract 2 first. That leaves me with 5 and 5/10 h, or times h, equals 13 minus 2 is 11. I'm going to divide both sides by 5 and 5/10. H is equal, so I'm going to do 11 divided by 5 and 5/10. I have to move it over 1, so I'm going to add in a 0 placeholder, a 0 on my decimal point. 5 goes into 11 twice, so I'm going to go 2 times 5 is 10, 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. No remainders, so it would be 2.0 or just 2. So our answer in this problem would be 2. And like I said, these two-step equations are not part of the standard, but they're just a good idea to see where you're going from here.